I would like to see Mr. de Klerk gather them together, black and white, Bishop Tutu, everyone, come together and repent for lying on God. Now, I would ask you as a Christian, one who proclaims and professes to have met Jesus, how are you and your people going to develop 2 million jobs for the country? All right. How are you going to stop making the Pope white, Mary white, Jesus white, Moses white when they were not white? When and where are you going to develop a mass education program and not tell the people to wait till they get to heaven? When are you going to tell the man with 47 cars to sell those cars and give that money back to the poor people so that they might have a decent life? When are you going to repent on behalf of the Christians for enslaving the people, the descendants of whom are in this building tonight? When are you going to repent for causing the slaves to be prostitutes? When are you going to repent and ask forgiveness? When are you going to ask the white people to give back at least half of the 87% of the land that they stole in view of the fact that the Bible said, thou shalt not steal? When are you going to persuade your Christian white brothers to not control 95% of every asset in this country? And finally, when are you going to persuade the white people to give to the Tswana tribe all the Kimberly property that was the birthplace of all of the diamonds, and give them an accounting for all the money due to them? When?
I have not studied much, but what I do know, I have met Jesus.
Thank you.
And I know he has changed my life.
So you don't want to answer the question?
That he will change many other
Thank
people
you, sir.
except him.
Can I have the next question?
All right,
please?
brother.
Thank you very much.
Keep the faith. When white people say they're white, they're not referring to the color of their skin. If Margaret Thatcher gets a suntan, I don't know what it would look like, but let's just assume that Margaret Thatcher got a suntan. You wouldn't call her a colored woman, would you? You would still call her a white woman, even though her skin may be brown. What do you mean when you say white? You mean that she is from Europe. So whether she's Italian, white, Sweden, white, England, white, France, white. White means coming from Europe. Black means coming from Africa. So whether we're fair skin, brown skin, dark skin, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, if we're from the black continent and we've been here 300 years, we are black people from the black continent. All over the world, 1 billion people uniting through Ramadan. That's why I'm hopeful and optimistic that by the year 2050, when 1 out of every 2 persons would have been born a Muslim, we would have the first real meaningful opportunity for a permanent world peace. Assalamu alaikum. This country could explode. Who will be the first targets? The businessmen, the lawyers, those who didn't want the masses in their office. They will come without your permission. So if Hitler killed 6 million Jews who were European Jews, and Hitler was a European, give the Jews part of Germany, not of Palestine. Sure, he works, so do I. Raising the kids is not easy. Cooking and washing and taking them to school, this is not easy. He doesn't seem to understand I work too. What I'm trying to find out, and you may know better than I do, tell me specifically, if I got this, everyone in this room, and we went out to the homeland and we started teaching people how to read who did not know how to read, what would the government do? What I'm saying to you in closing is that there is a great opportunity to really be a new South Africa and a new African. Forget the begging. There will be no gifts. I don't care what the World Bank tells you and International Monetary Fund tells you. It's crumbs.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, respected guests, brothers and sisters, I have been given the privilege of performing a simple yet important task in introducing to you three aspects of tonight's function, namely some information on Amal, your hosts, a brief motivation for tonight's subject matter, and most important, an introduction to our very special visitor and guest, Dr. Al-Talal Al-Mansour. Your organizing committee has made it abundantly clear to me that you all have registered and sacrificed your evening not to listen to me, but rather to our guest, and have thus placed a time limit on me. Be rest assured that I will complete my task as briefly as possible. The Association of Accountants and Lawyers for Islamic Law was formed some years ago by members of these respective professions who believed that Islam is a comprehensive and dynamic ideology capable of providing a clear and progressive direction in the economic, business and legal fields. The solution it seeks and advocates are meant to benefit those who are concerned with the weaknesses inherent in the existing economic, business and legal systems. Amal is research orientated and provides a forum where ideas are discussed and initiatives taken to implement those aspects that merit implementation. In the past, Amal, together with its members, have arranged major seminars, published and printed literature on the law of succession, the Islamic law of divorce, the law of trusts, employer-employee relationships. Amal has provided speakers and participants to many community organizations whenever required to do so to address various aspects of Islamic and/or community affairs. Has represented the South African Muslim community at conferences locally and internationally whenever required to do so. Has from time to time submitted memoranda on various issues of concern, more significantly its comprehensive and lengthy submission to the Law Commission on its research project number 59 titled Islamic Law and Related Matters. The varied and multifarious activities of Amal have briefly been mentioned. However, what needs to be recorded and made abundantly clear is that despite its achievements, it is still a fledgling organization with a potential for growth and improvement. The question has been raised, why the discussion on the role of the professions in a new and changing South Africa? For South Africa, indeed for the whole world, the past year has been one of change and major upheaval. In Eastern Europe and even the Soviet Union itself, political and economic upheaval surges ahead in an unstoppable tide. For the first time in the political history of South Africa, the possibility exists of breaking through the granite walls of apartheid and human exploitation, unraveling the energies of the contending forces and channeling them in the services of creating a society secure for all of us, obviously seems to be what this ravaged country is crying out for. But how? Who is to do it? When are the questions. It is therefore at this historic period of our transition that we as professionals, be it lawyers, accountants, economists or the like, should be taking stock of ourselves and evaluating our roles, our participation and involvement in a new and changing South Africa. The changing socio-political scenarios places serious responsibilities on all of us. As people who cherish freedom, justice and peace, We too look forward to the upliftment of humanity and the development of our beloved continent Africa. The Quran reminds us as follows: "And why should you not fight in the cause of God and of those who being weak are ill-treated and oppressed? Men, women and children whose cry is, 'Our Lord, rescue us from this town whose people are oppressors, and raise for us from thee one who will protect, and raise for us from thee one who will help.'" It is in this spirit and in this context that we welcome in our midst Brother Abdullah Tariq Al-Mansour. Like ourselves, Dr. Mansour is no stranger to a violent society and to the experiences of oppression, repression and exploitation. His own experiences have committed him in the struggle for justice and peace. Dr. Mansour is a person of international standing, and some highlights of this interesting personality may be summarized as follows. He was born in Pennsylvania, educated and obtained a Bachelor of Arts degree from Howard University with majors in philosophy and logic. Obtained the Pi Beta Kappa Honors Award, which is the highest academic recognition awarded in the United States. Recipient of a study fellowship to India and Egypt, and held private interviews with the Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, and President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Obtained the degree of Doctor of Jurisprudence from the University of California School of Law at Berkeley. Amongst his professional memberships include the California Bar Association, the American Bar Association, the International Bar Association, admitted to practice in the Supreme Courts of the State of California and of the United States. Professional membership also of the Islamic Centers of America and of the African American Association. He holds professional lectureship posts at the University of California at Berkeley and San Francisco State University. Guest lecturer at Harvard University, University of California at Berkeley, and the University of California at Los Angeles. He is recognized as an expert on the decline and emergence of Eastern Europe, Islamic economics, political and economic development in Africa, the Palestinian cause in international law, and the role of OPEC in the future of the world. Amongst his professional activities, he is the co-founder of the international law firm of Al-Waleed, Al-Talal Al-Mansour. He is a member of the board of directors of various international corporations involved in biomedicine, electronics, insurance, real estate, and banking. His honors and citations include the world's who's who in finance and in industry, international who's who in the Arab world, world's who's who in American law, and world's who's who of intellectuals. Publications. Every year during Ramadan, Dr. Al-Mansour spends the month fasting, praying, and writing a new book. 12 books have been written during the past 12 Ramadans. It is our privilege to call upon Dr. Mansour to address you. Jazakallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you, and I have to tell you that I have been looking forward to coming and sharing ideas with you. I do not look upon my presence this evening as a lecture so much as I do an opportunity to combine our experiences. You coming from one part of the world and me from another, but sharing a common goal in a common bond. We are determined to make contributions based upon the uniqueness of our professional and business background to an orderly world, to the development of a new world order, both within the continent of Africa and particularly within South Africa. I feel that I have credentials not those that have been read to you this evening, but physical credentials. Credentials acquired through my ancestors hundreds of years ago and beyond. Thousands of years ago, on this very continent, my ancestors walked with your ancestors here. And so in a very real sense, we have an obligation to this continent. Let me mention a fact that is being circulated throughout the industrialized world, and to a lesser extent, the third world. The United Nations has utilized its demographic computer research capability to get some idea of the profile of the world in the coming years. Out of this research, two startling and very impressive discoveries have been highlighted and announced. Number one, in approximately 30 years from now, just 30 years, projected to be the year 2020, it is estimated that the population of Africa south of the Sahara will be 1,600,000,000, of which a preponderant number would have been born Muslims. The second revelation, in some sectors of the world, is even more dramatic than the first. And that is in approximately 60 years from now, the year 2050. It is estimated that 50% of the world would have been born a Muslim, assuming that there are no more converts, assuming no more dawah, assuming that in America, where Islam is the fastest growing religion, assuming in Asia, where Islam is the fastest growing religion, assuming in Africa, where Islam is the fastest growing religion, assuming in the Caribbean, where Islam is the fastest growing religion, everything stops tonight, and there are no more converts. It will mean that in the year 2050, 50% of the world would have been born a Muslim. Now, if you add into that equation a factor to represent the growing Muslims in the world, the theoretical world of Islam in the future looks great. And from a very selfish point of view, those of us who have grown up as minorities, both racially and religiously in the world, you cannot help but utter a small chuckle, if not a prodigious smile, at the prospects of being a majority of the world, in spite of ourselves, in spite of our occasional laziness, in spite of our occasional laxity in representing the faith. In spite of us, we will be a part of the majority. Let me add two other factors to suggest to you why the head of the Catholic Church is visiting Africa more than in any other period in history. Next April, a conference is targeted for the Vatican. It is expected that 20 individuals throughout the world will be invited to discuss for approximately 1 week the social, political, economic, and religious complexion of the world in the 21st century. Primarily because of a book that I wrote entitled Social Dynamism of the 21st Century, I have been invited to be one of the 20 participants. So for the last 6 months, I have been receiving volumes and volumes of material that relate to many strategies of religious groups and economic groups throughout the world. One thing caught my fancy, and that was the remark in one of the writings that the Catholic Church has decided that the future of the Catholic Church is not Europe, because the number of converts that they will obtain in Europe is marginal. It is not Latin America. In fact, the church expects to lose members in Latin America. In fact, in the last 10 years, the Catholic Church has lost 5 million members in Latin America. According to the Catholic hierarchy and religious engineers, the future of the African continent is the future of the Catholic Church. And they do not intend to lose this continent. 1,600,000,000 just south of the Sahara. In order to let you know that you are not alone in the recognition of the importance of Islam, I must share with you the fact that the government of China has recently declared that Islam is an indigenous religion to China, and as such must be accorded certain priorities. And Christendom is a foreign religion to China, and as such cannot enjoy the priorities of Islam. Let me mention one other event to try to give you a framework for both our obligations as well as opportunities, commercially, religiously, socially, economically, and psychologically. I didn't mention spiritually because I assume you take that for granted. Only a few years ago, a gentleman by the name of Professor Yugo Itagaki was commissioned by the government of Japan to travel to Saudi Arabia. And he spent some time in Mecca and in Taif. His purpose was to study the religion and the practices of Islam. More the theoretical religion than the practices. And his mandate was based upon the realization that the Japanese planners have decided that the future of Japan may not be so bright. If the Japanese lose their sense of discipline, if they lose their sense of ethical morality, if the Japanese lose the ability to save 15 and 20% of their earnings, and if the Japanese lose a respect for education and knowledge, the Japanese have predicted that their society will decline. They feel that the onslaught from television will be too powerful. From the soapbox operas to the action-orientated films to the sex films, there's no way that 120 or 150 million people can protect themselves alone. And therefore, the Japanese commissioned Mr. Itagaki to examine several religions to see which one might be incorporated and integrated into the culture of Japan to save the Japanese people. It is very interesting to recognize the conclusions of the renowned professor. He said, within the mandate that I have been given, it is my considerate conclusion that Islam holds a great probability for the ultimate solution to the economic, social, educational, and spiritual framework required for Japan to survive as a prosperous people in the 21st century. He said that in spite of us. If he could have traveled to every Islamic society and observed firsthand our deeds, he might have been hesitant to make such a risky and widespread generalization. Because in my travels around the world, one of the most important segments of our community is the businessmen, the accounting profession, and the lawyers. We, for better or for worse, have acquired the tools for change. And we Muslims, for better or for worse, have become complacent, from time to time lazy, in a more crude way, backward and retarded in respect to the challenges that are facing us. I sympathize with the professional. I am not here to scold you. Every time I talk to my family and my wonderful wife, I have to reflect over my schedule of living on airplanes. I have to admit that there is an element of selfishness that creeps into my unquenchable curiosity to know everything I can about the world. It's something about knowledge that excites me more than anything on this planet. I want to know about space. I want to know about satellite mapping. I want to know about genetic engineering. I want to know about astronomy. I want to know about archaeology. I want to know about geometry. I want to know about mathematics. Not just to make money. I love knowledge. It does something to me intellectually. And I think I understand what the Quran means when it says to us as Muslims, search the universe. That is not a request, that is a command. The first word that the Prophet, peace be upon him, heard was Iqra. Iqra. It was not pray, it was not fast, it was not zakat, read. And that is where our Islamic professionals have our greatest defect. We feel that we have read enough. All of those years in school, all of those thick legal treatises and accounting forms and tax reports and tracking the development of inflation from an economic perspective, we feel tired. We don't want to see a book. And as a result, we are falling behind in the world. We are joining the class of beggars. We have little to offer the world. Because to be effective in the modern world is to offer knowledge. Those legal phrases that we have mastered so well that we can almost utter in our sleep may or may not constitute knowledge. It may in fact be a form of sophistry. It may have epistemological limitations. It may not enable a society to develop factories and computer programs and to understand robotics and to understand how to develop food production. It may be almost irrelevant in developing the basic marketing strategies. I'm suggesting that we cannot lose our legal framework, but we must pour into that framework knowledge of all kinds if we are to be relevant to the development of Africa and the development of South Africa. I would like to tell you that we have a choice. I would like to, because I sympathize with the psychology of professionals and businessmen. I know what it is like to be a part of a minority. And just to begin to see a little light, you don't want to invite controversy. Yes, I will pray. Yes, I will give zakat. But please don't embarrass me with these phrases in public. Assalamu alaikum. Who's? Say, walaikum salam, brother. And we rationalize that we're not hiding Islam, but we want to position ourselves to show the dignified profile of Islam that will ultimately bring more respectable people in. We can't just criticize people and expect them to love us. This is a cop-out. Because psychologically, the years that you have spent becoming respectable, you don't want to lose that. The years that you have spent telling your children, look what your father has done, you do not want to lose that. I understand and I sympathize. You don't want to be seen out in these townships and homelands saying Come here, my brother, let me shake your hand, let me get to know you. Say, well, what if someone sees me? What if this is in the paper and that same brother sees me in the street and he comes to my office and all these poor black people fill up my office? What will happen? I understand. It's a psychological problem that accompanies success. On one hand, you work so hard for success. On the other hand, success breeds a professional outlook and profile. We are caught in a dilemma. We can talk freely. We're home. We're all businessmen and lawyers. We don't have to pretend with each other. Outside, we may not tell everything. I'm not going to say this Wednesday night. Wednesday night, I'll be in the next room. I have a completely different topic. I'm not going to talk about us. But tonight, I want to discharge my obligation to you in South Africa. I can only share with you my experiences. I can only tell you that my brothers and my sisters, we do not have a choice. If we fail at this critical juncture in the history of South Africa, we will be written out of the future. And we may visit each other in the funeral parlors and in the graveyards. This country could explode. I hope not. I pray not, but I'm a realist. It could happen. Who will be the first targets? The businessmen, the lawyers, those who didn't want the masses in their office. They will come without your permission. That is the cold reality of life. Trace any country, and you will find that what I am telling you is not new. It is a description of life. My friends, you have no choice. Now, that's not the only reason that we want to become involved. That's not the only reason that we want to demonstrate our good faith. But if the instinct of survival means anything at all, it is a reason for you to listen carefully to what I am saying. I am serious. We must become involved politically, economically, professionally, educationally, and religiously. We must. Or the price that we will pay will be too horrible to contemplate. On the other hand, if we become involved in nonsense, we have contributed nothing. Our greatest contribution comes from our experience. Zakat is wonderful, we have to do it. But what we have to offer Africa is an orderly way to develop, consulting, structuring, engineering a process. Because that, at the end of the day, is our background and experience. But to discharge that experience properly, we must read. I have had the great pleasure of visiting many offices today. And Alma is taking me around to see the lawyers. And I've asked a lot of questions. They don't know what I'm asking so many questions about. Well, one reason is I'm ignorant. I want to learn. When I leave here, I want to know much, much more than when I came. So I have to ask questions. But while I am asking questions, I am looking at the office. I'm looking for Fortune magazine. I'm looking for Forbes. I'm looking for Business Week. I'm looking for publications that reinforce an ability to understand business, time management. Unfortunately, today, I didn't see too many of these publications. You are what you eat, and you are what you read. We cannot, with all of our degrees, help this country develop if we are ignorant. Lawyering is not enough. There are not enough legal problems. We need to mix our lawyer accounting skills in with business to understand junk bonds, deficit financing. We have to understand how the central bank in this country operates. What are the problems that they are facing? We have to understand where the capital surpluses are in the world and how to attract them into South Africa. We must write articles to advise the United Nations and the World Bank. And let some of your research in this organization be targeted for the World Bank. Show them how South Africa can be developed in a practically and an orderly and a successful way, utilizing recognizable business principles. That's your obligation. You must go to the townships and show people how to start a business from scratch, like the Japanese. I'm not asking you to work in a business every day, but I am asking you to provide the theorizing structure. Teach people the basic things of how to keep books, how to see a market. I was talking to brothers today, and they said, we have problems in the townships. I said, the whole world has problems. Don't become a beggar. My experience in the Middle East, every time I come, there are lines of people lined up. Please give me this. Please give me this. This is degrading. How many of us went to the Middle East before oil was discovered and said, let us make a contribution to you Bedouins in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait? We thought about them not at all. While they were living on dates and tea and kahwa. That's it. They were neglected and abused and despised. But now when we hear about the money, we want to claim, that's our money. What are you Arabs doing for Islam? The Quran tells you about that. The Quran says that Allah did not give everyone the same resource. And we should not covet what Allah has given someone else. I'm not going to Saudi Arabia begging them to come here and give me some money to set up a business in the township when we are here qualified and able to do it ourselves. Then I want to have the people in the Middle East come here and see what we have done. Then they feel happy to give you because of performance. Performance, the quantification of results. This is Islam. You can pray 5 times a day, every day, and the people there will still be starving while you're praying. Because in our heart of hearts, we have perverted Islam. And we have blasphemed our Creator. And we will be held accountable for that. Allah has said to each and every one of us, I have done something that I have not done for the mountains. I've done it for you. Something that I've not done for the water and the rivers, I've done it for you. Something that I have not done for the heavens, I have done for you. And something that I have not done for any of the animals or the plants, I have done for you. I have given part of myself, the Creator. I have put it inside of you at birth, a mind. And I'm going to hold you responsible for how you use that great gift that I have given you. It is a gift collectively that was used to create the world. Each of us has that gift in us. And rather than use that gift to implement the teachings of Allah, we have adopted the cowardly practice of saying to Allah, please take the mind back, I prefer to be helpless. Please, I don't want the mind. I want you to have it so that I can go to you and say, Allah, would you do this in the townships? And would you do this in my family? And would you do this on the television? Would you do this in the political arena? And would you do this to change the society? And would you do this to change the Afrikaner's mind? Allah, you're so great and so powerful. You do it. It's insulting to our Creator. If Allah had intended to interfere in every event of the world, He would have made you like the rock and the mountain without a mind. He gave you the ability to become a lawyer. He gave you the ability to become an accountant or a businessman. It's the mind that He put in you. Now, how are we going to use that mind? Let me suggest a few areas, and then I will stop, because you must have intellectual food and physical food. A balanced program is in the Quran. This country is facing a crisis. And the political arena is going to be volatile, jockeying for position. We are told by some not to worry about that. Only think about Iraq and Iran, or Iraq and Kuwait, or Jordan and Egypt. My brothers and my sisters, let me tell you something directly. I have been involved in the Middle East since 1966 in many, many levels, some of which I will not share with you this evening. If all of us tonight were to put our minds and thoughts together, from this room, we are not going to change the course of events in the Middle East over the next 2 or 3 years. In this room, we are not going to make that change. Regardless to how much energy and thought we expend, I believe we should expend it. I believe we should be aware. But we must recognize we can't change that right now. But you can have an effect on your home here in South Africa. So why not put most of your energy where you can have the greatest amount of benefit? You cannot have an effect if you do not have something to offer. I certainly cannot go to Mr. Mandela or Chief Buthelezi and say to them, I'm so intelligent, I want to show you how to solve the political problem of South Africa. Bring the clerk and I will teach all of you. This is nonsense. I can share what I have seen in the world. I can share the mistakes that the African American has made made in America, some of which are beginning to take place in this country. I can share the lack of proper prioritizing that we did in America since 1908 until 1990. And as a result, today there is no black American leader that can go to any city in America and draw 20,000 people, regardless of the population, without a band and a group of celebrities to bring those people in, except Louis Farrakhan. There is no one. All of the names that you hear, including Jesse Jackson, cannot draw 20,000 people in any one city in America because the masses of people do not want to hear that tired rhetoric that they have heard for decades and decades, and nothing has changed in their life. The people are intelligent. The masses know when you're sincere and when you're pretending. And politicians have a tendency to become entrapped in ego massaging and beautiful headlines and beautiful speeches, and the people pay the price. We as professionals cannot change the defining characteristics of the politicians. But if we can demonstrate that we have a better way, not through speeches, but through demonstration, the politicians are smart enough, they will follow our lead. If we go to the townships and show that a group of people can start from scratch and develop a viable sub-economy that can blossom, the politician will be right behind you saying, please vote for me. Let me see how this is done. That's the nature of politics. But if we think we can just sit back and wait, if we think that we can be embarrassed over the fact that we are Muslims, it's the last thing we want to tell anyone. How are you? We want to tell them, well, we're fine, the children are fine, everything fine, but please don't mention those Assalamu alaikum, alhamdulillah, please. Wait till we get to the mosque. These people in the court, they won't understand. Right in the corner, there's a judge, there's a judge. Who do you think you're fooling? Do you really think that judge cares whether you're a Muslim or not? He has you are black. That's it. He doesn't make these distinctions, black Hindu, black Christian, black Muslims. Once he reaches black, that has said it all. We learned this in America. We thought at first it's because we didn't speak the language properly. We thought because we didn't have the right necktie. And we got the right necktie, we got the latest fashions, we were able to articulate and use lovely words. Didn't matter, we were still black. That's who you are. You are black people. And I'm happy for that. So the whites are not, they promised before. When the Asians came first in the 17th century, and then in 1860, as indentured and as merchants, they promised you, if you just stay away from those coffers, we have a special place. Now, you can never be like us, but we have an in-between place that's safe and sound, but just you have to stay away from them. We believed it, many of us, and we stayed away, and now the masses hate us. Do you blame them? Oh, we occasionally gave a little money. We said if there's going to be two parties, let's give a few dollars here and a few rand there just in case. People know, especially politicians. We are going to be judged by our deeds. Something I learned since I was here is amazing to me. This Quran in the United States probably cost about $40. When they told me that the Islamic propagation centers were selling this for 5 Rand, I don't believe it. I said, how? If you're going to sell this for 5 Rand, you must have sold 50 million last year. They said, no one wants it. The people won't buy it. I said, well, the poor people, maybe they can't even afford 5 Rands. That may be different. But certainly, I know the professionals are buying them and giving them to employees and the clerks. They said, well, they say that's really not our job. Well, then what is your job? What are you here for? I want to know what your brief, verbal and written brief, is going to be on the day of judgment. I want to know what selection of words you're going to employ on the day of judgment to convince Allah that you have fulfilled your obligation to get involved in His work. I want to hear that brief. I want to be in the jury as an observer. When He simply tells the angels to bring the scales and to put the deeds on the scale and to put my word on the other scale. You think you can con Him? You think you can out-talk Him? What are you going to say? Let us, please permit me to be pedestrian. Let's forget the nonsense. And let's go back to our roots. And let's be real professional Muslims. Let's take these brothers from the township. Go on out. They're not going to kill you. And if they do kill you, it's better to die in the service of Allah than die in an automobile accident in the streets of Durban. Let's take a marketing enterprise, selling. The people in the townships have to eat, so they're going to buy food and clothes. Let's organize a sales force and supply them with foods and clothes and have a distribution business and lock up the country. There's nothing wrong with making money. You can be paid. I'm not asking you to donate this. Just give us deferred payment. Let us pay you after the first year. Then we'll pay you every year thereafter. Let us get a start. Let the merchants give us some fabric on consignment. We'll pay you. Let's set up the proper accounting controls. Let's train the brothers and still keep your professional practice. Let us alternate. I will take it one week, you will take it next week, but let's not be splintered. We have enough people here to take this whole area and make it viable, like the Japanese did, against all odds. But they didn't wait, sit back, make excuses. They said the time has come, get up and get involved. During the question and answer period, I hope I have the opportunity to give you some idea of what you can do, not only in South Africa, but how they can impact on all of Africa. You can save this continent. You can do that. And if you do not do it, you're going to pay a price. And if you do not do it, you will pay an internal price and you will pay an external price. Because Israel is going to do it. While you are talking about Iraq and Kuwait, Israel is preparing tonight to dominate the economic distribution of all of Africa because they cannot survive by themselves. That small country gets $3 billion a year from America. And they're still a basket case economically. $3 billion. If there's a peace in the Middle East, the $3 billion will be eliminated. What will they do to survive? If you can't make it with 3.5 million people with $3 billion gift, how are you going to make it with nothing? There are no resources there. The Israelis are not crazy, they know that. So they say, just like the Pope, Africa is the hope. Our biggest fear is the Muslims. because the Muslims have certain advantages. Most of Africa will be Islamic. We have an edge right now. If we don't let Islam become defiled, if we don't let our brothers in Africa become disappointed in us, if we don't let them become disillusioned, if we permit them to develop a consensus that we're not serious, we don't believe in them. I understand the history. I understand the caste system. I understand apartheid. But I do not understand not fulfilling the word of Allah. You are not going to tell Allah that hundreds of years ago I was a product of the caste system, please forgive me. He will say, I forgive you, go to hell. The white people who are running the apartheid system promised me, and I just wanted it just a little longer. Then I was going to change. You go in these streets